Welcome back to the Moll Anderson Show. Well, you may think you know about your man's sexuality, but I'm very happy to have on Dr. Abraham Morgentaler to reveal what is fact and fiction when it comes to men and sex. Hi, Doctor.
Hi there. How are you?
I am great. How are you?
Excellent.
Well, tell us about this. Now, we've all heard about women faking an orgasm, but not so much for men. You claim men most certainly do fake orgasms in your book, Why Men Fake It, The Totally Unexpected Truth About Men and Sex. Tell us all about this.
Well, I got to tell you, so I'm a specialist in male sexual issues, and I've been doing this work for 25 years. But when a young man who was 25 years old came into my office about 6 years ago, and told me that he was faking his orgasms, I'd never heard of that in my life, and I thought it was wild.
I would imagine.
Once I got past the question of how he faked it, what really interested me was about why he would do it. And my book, Why Men Fake It, is really about the mind of man and trying to let the public know that a lot of what we think about men and sex and relationships is actually wrong. And men are much more interesting than I think we give them credit for.
I would tend to agree with you. My husband's pretty interesting.
So, it turns out that this business about men faking orgasms is not that rare. It's just something that hasn't come up and people don't talk about it. So there's one study out of the University of Kansas in younger men where 21% of them said that faked it at one point in their lives.
How? Okay, I know my listeners right now are going, okay, how is it possible for a man to fake an orgasm?
Well, to not be too crude about it, but if a guy's wearing a condom, all he has to do is make a quick exit to the bathroom.
Okay.
And there's no evidence. And, of course, men can act just as well as women, I would think.
Wow, we didn't realize that.
but part of the reason that I think people are so shocked at the idea is that men fake it when they feel like the orgasm isn't going to happen for them, which is pretty much the same reason that women do it.
Mm.
And everybody thinks that sex for guys is this automatic, almost robotic thing, and it's not true. So there are a lot of guys, if they have a little bit too much to drink, it may not happen. A lot of men are on the antidepressants or anxiety medicines called SSRIs, like Paxil, Zoloft, Prozac, and they can have side effects where it's difficult. And other guys may just have low testosterone, which can make it more difficult to come. And so they figure out a way to do it. But the motivation for men, and this is really what my book is about, is that for a lot of men, their motivation is the opposite of what we attribute to them, where they're supposed to just be interested in themselves. Guys actually care very much about being good to their partners, good sexual providers,
mm-hmm.
and trying as hard as they know how to be considerate and thoughtful.
Wow. That's awesome, though.
It is awesome. So, so the thing that I get from guys coming into my office is that they tell me things that they've often never told to anybody else. And, guys are stuck with this image of how important it is to be macho and, their ideas of masculinity. And when men are with men, they sometimes will actually act the worst in terms of what their attitudes are about women. But when they come in the office, you actually hear about what it is that they're concerned about if things aren't going right. And the ultimate end of the story is that guys care more, once they're in a relationship and they have feelings,
mm-hmm.
they care more about their partner's pleasure than their own. Can I tell you about a story?
Absolutely.
Guy comes in my office. He's 27 years old. He's paraplegic, so he comes in a wheelchair. And nothing works down there. So I treat him medically so he can have sex with his wife, and everything works out fabulous. And she's happy. He's ecstatic, and he comes back and follow-up. And what he said to me I thought was so revealing. And what he says was, "Doctor, I feel like a man again."
Oh.
And I think the average person who hears that story assumes that the reason he feels good is because he's a guy and he's having sex.
Sure.
But the kicker in the story is that this is a guy who has no feeling down. He actually gets no physical pleasure out of having sex and doesn't have an orgasm. The reason he feels like a man again is exactly because of what he's able to provide sexually for his wife.
Wow. If you're just joining me, we're visiting with Dr. Abraham Morgentaler, who's authored the book, Why Men Fake It, The Totally Unexpected Truth About Men and Sex. Wow, I just love that story you just told. I mean, it's so special and very deep. It reminds me of the movie that I'm sure you saw. If you didn't, I would be surprised. The Sessions.
Oh, I've heard of it. I never saw it.
Oh my gosh, Doctor, of all people, you've got to see this movie because it was just, honestly, it was one of those movies, not to get, sidetracked, but it really has to do with this. I mean, it was one of those movies where I watched it first before I had my husband watch it because I didn't know what it was going to be. I had no idea. But here's this man who's quadriplegic and it was the most beautiful story, and he spends time with a priest trying to decide if it's okay for him to want to have sex and want to have these desires, and he ends up falling in love in it. And it's a tremendous movie, and my husband saw it. It was so deep because it was really just about him wanting to feel like a man.
Yeah, and for the women listeners of your show, I think what's really important is to emphasize that, because one of the driving principles for men from when they're children on up is to actually feel manly. Like, that's so important. And it happens in two primary ways. One is this kind of competitive way, man with man, right? Like competing at sports or games or whatever it is, physical. But the other one that's just as important is about how men are with their partners. And I think that men have gotten a bad rap.
No, I agree with you. I'm a big fan of men here, and I'm always telling women to pay attention to their husbands. Because if you don't, somebody else will.
That's right, because the guys really want to feel manly, and what that often means in a relationship is being gallant or even noble. Guys really want to be, they don't always understand exactly what it is that the woman wants, but boy, they try awfully hard to try and provide that.
Yes.
And I think guys have gotten a bad rap partly because guys don't talk and they don't advocate for themselves very much. For the last 40, 50 years, we've had an ongoing conversation about women, women's bodies, women's issues, women's reproduction, and, where women fit in society. And there's been almost nothing like that for men. And when there's a vacuum, it often gets filled up with whatever is out there. And so what we see instead is whatever happens in the scandal sheets, this actor or that celebrity or politician.
The predisposition to being unfaithful.
Exactly. And most of the guys are really, what they want more than anything in the world, if they're in a relationship, is for their partner, is to feel from their partner that they're valued and appreciated for what they offer as a man.
Well, it makes sense to me. Now, maybe you can give us 5 things that every woman, should know about men.
Good. Number 1, men want to be manly.
Yes.
So sometimes what that means is let the guy make a decision.
Yes.
Even if you think you know what's right.
See, I like it when my husband makes decisions. I love it.
Yeah, and he does too.
Yes.
And there are ways that women can get what they want and still let the guy be the decider, if you will, and everybody wins.
I agree.
Yeah. Number two is understand that the man wants to be a provider in bed. So it's not whatever you've read or whatever you've heard from girlfriends or in the magazines is not true. If he wants to do something really nice for you, let him.
Got it.
Number 3, men are people too.
Yes,
and
they
by
are.
that what I mean is that they've got feelings even though they've been trained their whole life to try and not show them. So I think that it's really easy when somebody doesn't give you much emotion back to try and get a rise out of somebody. But guys feel cutting comments just like your best girlfriends do.
Absolutely. Oh, my gosh.
So,
yeah, see, and women don't understand this, because communication, it happens. I mean, little boys, like you said, from the time they're little, don't cry, don't show emotion, be a man. It's the whole different meaning to what being a man really is. That's
exactly right. And related to that is number 4, which is that a little compliment for a guy goes an awful long way.
Yes, it does.
For a woman to tell the man something, it can be small. It can be, well, you look really good in that shirt.
Mm-hmm.
Or after sex, for example, even better. Like, I love that was great.
Or you rock my world. Does that work?
Perfect. I mean, you can do that once a week, and the guy will be on cloud 9.
Hey, you know what? I'm all for this. I think women need to understand that it's just so important. We can't just sit around waiting for the men to do all the complimenting. It's got to go both ways.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And number 5, I would say, is that I think it's important for women to understand that sex is more for men than just sex. It's often the only way, and certainly one of the best ways, that they actually can express love and affection.
Well, you've opened a lot of my listeners' ears, and I love everything that you're saying, because it's interesting, and my audience knows this. I was 45 when I finally met the right man, and but I take responsibility for all of the choices I made before that, and I keep trying to explain to women that we all have to take responsibility, and when we get whole in ourselves and we really focus on being happy people, we attract happy people. It makes it a lot more fun,
I'm with you on that one. Good for you.
Well, I love your book, and I really hope that y'all go out and buy it. It's called Why Men Fake It, The Totally Unexpected Truth About Men and Sex. This is so needed, Dr. Morgentaler. Thank you so much for writing it, and I just hope it just blows the doors out, because women, you need to read this, because you need to understand what your man's all about. So thank you so much for sharing it. I hope you'll come back and share some more.
I'd love to. Thanks so much for having me.
Oh, anytime. I'll be right back.